Coming from an engineering background and being well known for his logical mind, David Ho's world was turned upside down when he found himself lying on the bathroom floor of his hotel room and later being diagnosed with macular degeneration. Exploring a new world of energy healing, he repaired his vision and got his life back on track. Here is what he has to share. My name is Thorsten Lüdecke, and this is the Wisdom Qigong podcast. David is a Qigong teacher based in England. He offers trainings person to person, but also on Zoom, which can be very exciting because his specialty is actually the eye and the health of the eye. And you've got a story to tell. So I think, David, you should just jump in and let us know about yourself and your story with Qigong, please.
Life was busy, as it is with everybody else. I thought I was perfectly healthy. I'd been a runner most of my life. And we go back to, there's an event in 2016 that was a bit of a watershed moment for me. As I said, I've been very healthy, I thought. I've been spent most of my working life living away from home during the week. So it's this week commuting stuff. And the week before something happened, I thought, well, I'll go for a run one evening. Did 10 miles, so about 16K. Wasn't fast, but I thought, well, at your age, that's okay. And then this evening, I woke up and found myself on the bathroom floor in a hotel. Not feeling pretty well, to be perfectly honest. And then I was a bit ill. And it didn't really improve to the point I ended up going home the next day, and a friend's wife was a consultant who heard about it, talked about the symptoms, and asked my wife to ring for an ambulance, basically. So I ended up in intensive care for 2 weeks, and my blood sodium level had dropped to critical level. Unbeknown to me, the consultant said to my wife, well, he'll either have brain damage or he'll die. But somehow I chose a different option, and that came through. At the end of it, they kind of went, you're fine now, you're discharged. And I went, okay, so what caused it? And a little bit. So, oh, well, you were sick, and then, violent sick, so that would have reduced your blood salts. And I thought, even in my muddled state, that didn't work for my processed head, because I was rather ill after I found myself on the floor. So there was a question of doubt going on in my head. And then as a result of this being in hospital, I developed a problem in my right eye. When I came out, I kind of had like a watermark in my right eye, which was pretty irritating and made it really difficult. You couldn't really drive at night because any car headlight was a big flare going on. So when I went to see my optician for it, it's usually an annual eye check, okay. You've got macular degeneration in your right eye. Okay. So what does that involve? Okay, well, the back end of your eye, the layers kind of all puffed up. So the macula, which is like a dip down a focal point for your eye, that's now become quite fat. And it's not precise. In which compared to two eyes, the left one's really clear, the right one's not so clever. I said, okay. And so what's that mean? Well, he said, well, it's dry, so it's good, because it's not critical. But you should really keep an eye on how your eye progresses. So he said, right now you can probably still see straight lines, and you print out a grid, you can see the line. He says, in time, it'll fade, become kind of a bit wiggly. And then over time, it'll just get worse, and it'll probably vision will start contracting. There's not much you can worry about because that's the way it is. And believe it or not, macular degeneration is very common as you get older. And I guess I was early 50s at the time. So more from sort of 70s, 80s onwards, Like, I mean, it's basically when I've looked it up, by the time you get to your 90s, it's kind of like 1 in 3 or 1 in 5 will have it. It's just a bit premature and not very helpful to, if you want to use your site and stuff. So I kind of thought, I don't really want this. In the meantime, for a number of reasons, I wanted to try and find a different practice from running, because I'm trying to give up running now. And I remember my mother used to do Tai Chi when I was very young. And actually, when she got a bit older, and I thought, well, that kind of looked like some kind of movement. And family-wise, I'm originally from Hong Kong, about 50 years ago now. But, so that whole Asian culture has some resonance, although I've never really been very close to it. And we went around looking for somewhere to learn Tai Chi or Qigong. My wife said, actually, Qigong sounds really interesting from what she knows. So she's also in the sort of energy healing business. They do bioresonance. And we tried to find someone locally. Wasn't terribly successful. There was someone that purported to do Tai Chi and Qigong, and we basically did one movement, and there was lots of Tai Chi and stuff. So it really wasn't our bag. So I ended up learning some stuff online. And of course, the internet being what it is, you can get a cornucopia of useful stuff out there. But I just felt I wanted to do it with people, just get some interaction and get some feedback. So after much ado, a person introduced me to a person, to another person, and I eventually ended up talking to Britta. And as I said, that's where the story really began. So having done some body and mind, I think originally it was called Body and Mind, one of the workshops online, it really resonated with me. And I liked the practice. So I was still in this sort of practice, do stuff, and then whatever, anything else. So I was much more interested in just the exercise to start with, because I feel.
David, I would challenge when you say this is really where the story began, because when I listened to you, the story began earlier in my mind. When the doctor said to you, well, there's nothing we can do. And you, in your typical British understatement, said, well, I don't really want that. I think this is already a Qigong state to transform information, to say, I don't accept this information. And I think this is probably where the journey started. And then you found Britta and the Jineng Qigong online course, and you found a tool to turn this into a reality. So I just thought I mentioned this because I think it's very important for listeners to understand that this is the first step. Not to accept the information, the negative information, but to say, okay, that might be what doctors are telling me, or the people in my life are telling me, but it's not my part. It's not what I want for me. So sorry for the interruption, but yeah, go on, please.
I stand corrected, and you're quite right, Torsten. So I'm reminded of one of my appraisals when I was in the military, which said David is quite petulant. And actually, I think petulance in the right context can be really helpful. So we are taught things or led to believe stuff, which doesn't necessarily really ring true. It is entirely depending on the frame of reference, as we describe it, right? The context of how we see the world. And we don't have to agree with everything we're told, especially if it's something relating to your own health and well-being. Because there's only one person that it deeply affects. That's the person in the mirror. Everybody else, it's just, okay, it's useful. I mean, what we've learned in this journey is, having diagnoses from various things, it's great. Actually, it just tells me what I can work on. And that's a good way of positioning yourself in life, and not the defeatist of the term that comes to my mind, but that's probably not really the right. It's sort of, don't allow the negative to rule your life, because it doesn't have to be that way. And to go back to the story, with the Zen and Qigong, I really got into the habit of practicing. And as you may well realize, having a disciplined background, actually doing things in a disciplined way comes relatively easy to me. I just changed my schedule. So I started to get up at 5 a.m. to do an hour or two of Qigong every day. So round about just before COVID time, my eye scan in my right eye said I'd lost about 40% of the peripheral vision. And with the blessing of COVID, we did lots of training online and practice. 2 years later, when I went back for my scan, it was back to 100%. So, the lots of people would say, oh, well, that couldn't happen. Maybe not for somebody else, but it has done for me. And
Right.
that's so important because we come across so many other people who, when you get your mindset correct and work on what you need to work on, having understood some basic principles, amazing recoveries happen. So, in short, I think it's been a real gift understanding this. But the start point is to don't necessarily believe everything we're led to believe and look to change things. If your intention is clear, strange things really happen, which I guess we come across quite a few times, right?
We have a way you can discover Qigong. So at the Chineng Qigong Students Hub, we know that understanding Qigong is very important. And also that Chineng Qigong in itself has various nuances that people can't easily comprehend. So we've approached it in the style of a video game. On this page, Discover Qigong, you can select your character. So you can either be a beginner, a practitioner, or a holistic healer or self-healer. And you click on your character and it takes you to these different sections. In these sections, you can explore the nuances. And when you click on a card, all of the resources pop up, and we've made it really fun, and not many people know about it. So if you are interested, have a look and discover Qigong.
That is the point that I wanted to make. You're taking the words out of my mouth here, because usually when we listen to a story like that you've recovered from 40% to 100%, people say, wow, this is like a miracle, but it doesn't happen very often. Now, the truth is that in our environment, if we meet other Chineng Qigong practitioners, many of them have stories like this to tell. So it's not so uncommon. It happens a lot, and there's a reason why it happens. And I think one of the reasons, I'm not saying it's the only one, but one of the reasons that you pointed out is the discipline in your practice. Because so many people, they look at their daily schedule and they say, it's impossible to practice 2 hours or 3 hours. How would I do this? And you said, oh, I simply looked at my schedule and I changed things around, and I got up earlier, and there were my 2 hours of practice, or I don't know how long you did practice in the morning. But this obviously makes a difference, because that is the idea of Chineng Qigong, that you use these tools. But you do have to practice, because otherwise not much is happening unless your consciousness is extremely evolved and you can just do it through your consciousness. But I think this is an important point, why it's not just about listening to this podcast and say, well, I wish that would happen to me as well. You have to be very active to achieve that. And so I think it's important to look into this a little bit more in detail, maybe, to explain to people, what have you done? What was your mindset at the time? How did you experience things, so that people, have a route that could inspire them. They don't have to take the same route, but it can be inspiring and give them ideas of how they can deal with their challenges.
Yeah, I mean, the way I kind of look at it is, it's taken a lifetime to get me to this precarious spot. So, we talk about, imagine I was a barrel of chi, let's say. You're born with so much, and it's been dribbling away for most of my life, and I've done stuff that depletes it. It's really unreasonable to think you're going to change that overnight. So logically in my head is, okay, I now understand some of my 3 dantians. They're clearly depleted because things have gone wrong. So first step is you have to practice to top it up. and lift you up, port you down, a fantastic practice, and 3 center merge. So I basically did that for 2 years. So get up in the morning when it was nice and quiet, out the way. It didn't really matter if I was, in a hotel somewhere or back at home. I could do that and spend that time. Everything's totally quiet. It's easier for me anyway, first thing in the morning, because all your thinking stuff it's gone quiet from the night before, hasn't started up again. It's easy to concentrate. And if your mind drifts off a bit, that's fine. You'll come back. But don't be harsh on yourself. And just do the practice. Spend the time focusing inside ourselves as against worrying about anything that's happening around you. And just the whole giving yourself permission to spend time on yourself, I think, for me, made a huge difference. And it was really, if I think back now, really basic, very, almost mechanistic, but with a intention of doing something about my condition. And that really helped. So, getting up early worked for me. So I basically do about an hour, maybe a bit more in the morning, and then get into the humdrum of the day. And then in the evening, after a while, I learned body and mind, which I really liked. So in the evening, I do body and mind. And that's actually still pretty much my routine. I do some stuff in the evening, I do a body and mind. But it's just, it's developing a new habit. Same habit as you have when you brush your teeth, comb your hair, or whatever it is. It just comes normal and natural. And that helps you develop this habit of, I am spending time on myself. B, I'm connecting to all my parts. I'm making my intention come true. But then it's just enhancing your ability to learn. Because when you first do practice, it's kind of a bit mechanical. I just do stuff. And, I'd never thought myself to be sensitive. And when my wife talked about chi and stuff and, gathering years ago, I go, well, I don't feel anything. I don't really get it. But actually, it's only with practice, when I now no longer have to think about the mechanics, that I suddenly realize, well, actually, I feel all the things happening. I can feel something pulsating between my hands. And, if you do Lachi and send it into your eyes, that's that lovely feeling. It's a permanent base all the way through. Only comes with practice. And you don't have to start believing everything, but when you start to feel it, in my case, it's hard not to believe that something's happening. And that's the real big change, right? Because I can demonstrate to myself that something that is outside my norm could actually be quite normal. So when I want to do introduction sessions with people, we always start quite early on with an exercise to demonstrate the power of your conscious mind to change shape your hand. And there's 80% of people have done it successfully. And a very important one data point that says, you know what, crikey, I could do something like this. Because we all can. The great shame is we all can, but so few people have had the opportunity to understand that and experience it. Because it doesn't have to be Zone Qigong, could be whatever, Reiki, whatever. Some people will benefit from that if we learn how to make use of the learnings that have been around for thousands of years when life was a bit simpler. Life is clearly very complicated today, but doesn't mean you can't stop it for a moment to look after yourself.
I think that's an important point that you're making there when you mentioned it's been around for thousands of years, or the ideas have been around for thousands of years. So this is not something you or somebody suddenly came up with. Yes, it has been refined and it's now, obviously at a higher level than maybe it used to be, but it's been successful for thousands of years. That is the reason why it's still around. If it would have never worked, it wouldn't be there. So I think this is in itself a very logic idea to understand that. And then when you explained that the moment it really hits you is when you start to feel things, when you start, okay, well, there is something that feels like chi, there is something moving. That is when the trust comes in. So you're not necessarily asking people, believe in something that you haven't experienced, everybody has an opportunity to get their own experience. And then they say, wow, if I can feel that, well, maybe what else is possible? But in addition to that, I want to go back a little further to something else you said, because I think it could be key to many people. Because the question is, practicing 2 hours in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, what is my mindset when I'm doing that? Is it like I have to? Do I feel like, oh my God, now I have to do my exercise? Or is my mindset, and I'm quoting you, where you said, okay, I realized I am important. And I spent this time on me because, I matter. I'm important. And this gives the whole training and the whole discipline a completely different context and feel, because you're not doing it because you have to. It's really because you value who you are, and you value your health, and you value everything about you. And I think this is so powerful because it's also a message to the unconscious mind, who actually does all the healing. So it's kind of the conscious mind initiates it, but the unconscious, it has to do all the bodily functions to create the healing. So the unconscious mind at one point has to understand, I am important. My health matters. And if you get that across, then the unconscious mind will say, wow, this guy is serious. I'll better, get my job done here and create my health, right? If you don't have this mindset, and it's a must do, and some teacher told you, the unconscious thinks, what the heck, basically. But to be in a state of, okay, this is for me, this is about my time. It's so difficult for many people because, they don't value themselves. But I think that could also have made a key difference in your success, and while you're sitting in front of me today, healthy and happy, and with all the beautiful things that you're doing in your life. So that's why I thought I'll come back to this. I'm sorry for jumping. No. I didn't want to miss that point, because you said it so nicely, and I want to make sure our listeners hear that message, right?
Yeah. Like anybody else, I have good days and bad. There's some days when it's really easy to practice, and there's some days that's just, I'm not sure I really can be bothered. But what I have found is that actually on the days when you can't be bothered, when you do straighten yourself up and do a practice, it makes a huge difference. It's funny, quite obvious really in some respects. If I'm depleted, my emotions are a bit out of whack, I'm probably going to go, don't really want to do this. Well, actually, that is just a time when I should be doing it. So it's in some ways, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We know what's good for us. We know what we can do. We've been given some tools. We just need to practice it. And it's sometimes quite difficult to remember all the great things we've learned. I mean, there was a couple of years ago, I was doing some work in a garden, and I managed to put a little thorn into my little finger. Didn't really realize it much. And then it got a bit sore during the day. And then it really got very sore. It spread to my whole hand. But when I was trying to go to bed, it had gone up to my elbow and was showing no sign of stopping. And I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to sleep. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll go and take an aspirin or something. And then somewhere in the back of my head, I heard Master Liu's voice talk about left-right meditation. And I thought, there's a tool there. Just use it. And it literally took no more than 5 minutes. It all went away. And I went into sleep. We've learned these great tools, but often we forget to use them, because I could have saved myself about 6 hours of pain if I'd done it much earlier on. So being conscious of ourselves, we also need to be conscious of what we're capable of, because it's easy to get in the humdrum of the day.
Does your story continue, your Qigong journey? So what else did you explore?
So having decided to learn how to do this properly, that's why I thought, look, I'll sign up to be a therapist. Not really thinking I'd actually really look to put it into practice. I mean, as the old adage, and the military are very good at that. You want to learn, you want to be good at something, go teach it. So learn to teach it. But actually in this journey, it's been so amazing. I'm quite fortunate in that where I work, it's a huge organization. I happened to talk to one of the communications people one day. So I've just been doing this course in Cyprus, and it's been really great. And she said, "Wow, it's amazing. We're doing a well-being month for this organization. Would you like to do something?" And I thought, "Oh, okay." So we arranged to do some introductory workshops on Zoom, just to show people what you can do. And attendance is variable because it's kind of at work and stuff. But I now have half a dozen people that regularly turn up, and some of their improvements are just amazing. It really reinforces my belief that if we learn how to do some stuff, we can really help ourselves. And my preference is not to give people healing, if I'm really honest. I want people to learn how to help themselves. And if they really need it, I'll do a bit of a healing for you, but it is a bit reluctant, because I think fundamentally we should harness our capability and learn. And I'll give you two examples. A young man, mid-20s, I think, he was slightly prone to having bad days and being ill, and I didn't really think much about it. And then one day he kind of told me that he's got MS. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want anyone else to know about it, but he just wanted me to know, given that he'd been doing this practice with me. But he was very determined to change his outcome. And he religiously did Hochi up, Hochi down every day. And slowly he got less unwell. And then it's now January, about 9 months ago, we had a conversation. He's since moved to a different place. And he said, I just had my annual scan, and it's clear. He had changed his life, right? His MS had been defeated. And he still practices now, because I said, well, you need to stay on top of it. So anytime anytime he has an issue is that his practice has lapsed a bit, then we'll go and do some refreshment. I might give him a little bit of help, but he's back on track. So that's just a person who realizes their own capability and refuses to believe his diagnosis and wants to do something different. There's a lady who, when we first met, had really bad arthritis through some event or another. She couldn't really move. But she really resonated with the first introductory session. And when we got to these weekly sessions, she learned Hochi up, Hochi down, and was very, very disciplined every day, very clear. She wanted to do something different. Her intention was that, she wanted to dance again. Really good, long-sighted intention. And every week that was like an amazing journey of her improving herself. So initially, she could not put her hands on her feet during the whole chip portrait down. A couple of weeks in, she said, yeah, I can easily do that now. She lives where she has to take a bus to the train station to get into work. And a few months into this, she was very excited when we met up on a Thursday evening and said, you won't believe this. She took the bus to the train station this morning, and for whatever reason, the train was cancelled. And she thought, you know what? I'm not going to wait for the bus. And she walked home, which was about a mile, 1.6 kilometers, right? Over the moon with herself. And actually, it's just, and you can see the person glowing inside. And it's continued. She continues diligently to practice and improves all the time. To a point, once she was telling me she found herself running for the train. It's like, wow, it's just the same person a year on. All because she has that intention. We've just given her a wee tool or two, and she just practiced it, knowing it makes a big difference to herself. So, that had made, those, and they're not the only people, but those two really stand out to me as in this quite a long journey of mine of learning to become a therapist. Been so so heartwarming to see people. And I just want to try and encourage more and more people to understand their own capability and go and help themselves. And when you learn to help yourself, go help some other people. Because if we all cause that sort of ripple effect outwards of just helping the world get better, get people to be more comfortable in their own skin, not react to every bombardment of negativity that we receive 24/7. Actually, I think it would just be better all around. It would be better for people. And every time we help someone else, as you well know, we benefit from it too. Because, where the chi flows, wherever your mind goes, if your mind is positive, you will bring positive energy back into yourself from other places.
And that is something that you said before we started the podcast, actually, that you feel that it is important to introduce the practice to other people so they can use it if they want to. Now, if nobody does that and we just keep it for ourselves, we're not making much of an impact other than in our own life. But by simply showing up, by having the courage also to offer courses, because a lot of people I know that are doing fabulous work for themselves, they feel like, oh, I don't have the skill sets to teach others and stuff like that. But it's nonsense. I mean, if one person in your group has a result like this, it was all worth it. So even though you might not have a 25-year education in Qin and Qigong, but you have your experience and you have something to show people, you have something to teach people. It's important to step up and to say, okay, here's what I can offer. And then I love also the way you encourage people to take responsibilities for themselves and to say, here are your tools. If you have a clear intention, and it seems that the people that you mentioned there, they had a clear intention, a clear commitment towards their health and their lives, and they take it up and they do with it whatever they do. And then you see them 6 months later, 9 months later, and you hear all these wonderful stories. So I think this is a great way and an encouragement to all the listeners out there who have been successful with Qin and Qigong to say, well, don't be shy to share it with you don't even have to offer courses, just share it with your family, with your friends. If you've got someone in your environment who struggles, show them an exercise here or there, and it can already make a difference in somebody else's life. So I'm glad you mentioned this towards the end of our podcast, and because it's important to make sure this work is growing and other people hear about it.
And I think a simple act of providing hope for people is so fundamental, because most people suffer in silence because that's their lot.
Yes.
And it doesn't, in the same way as a diagnosis doesn't have to define you. That doesn't have to be their lot. And why would we allow people to be miserable if through a tiny amount of effort, we can help them?
Yeah.
It's because the reward is not a financial thing. The reward is just, it's in your heart. And I would really encourage people just to help other people. And I know it's difficult. People don't necessarily want to accept this woo-woo stuff because of the conditioning, but that's fine. You can offer. You can lead a horse to water. You don't have to make it drink. So if we're trying our level best to help more people understand, that's a really good start.
And you are currently focusing on eye training because you had an very good experience where you healed your eye, and you're offering these courses online, right? So anyone in the world who feels like, okay, I want to improve my eye health can join these courses, can work with you, and see for themselves what Qin and Qigong can do. In this case, particular with eye health. I mean, obviously, I know you're a Hunyan therapist, so you can basically deal with any disease, but your focus is currently on eye when it comes to trainings that you offer.
Yeah, so I'm doing an online session once a month. So 12th of January, I'm doing a session in the morning UK time, and then 23rd of February, I'm doing an evening session UK time, just kind of fitting with America's a wee bit better. So I did my first session in December. That was quite successful. So it's quite nice when people turn up. including a really nice gentleman I met on the play one day, or just showcase that. So it's kind of nice when you just randomly introduce people. And as long as people attend, I will run them because it's just like an extension of my daily practice. I just happen to do a whole bunch of people and do some talking and talk a bit about theory and just help people understand really simple things, show people the ability of their mind to make a change themselves physically and then actually feel themselves doing the practice. At the end of that, I've always found having an audio recording is really helpful for people. And that's certainly some of the feedback I had. Videos are fine, but actually when people are trying to do a practice, it's easier for them to have their eyes closed and just listen to instruction. So I've got some condensed versions of how to do these practices that just really designed for somebody to stick in their earbud or whatever and just go and do a practice. And you can do that at home, walking around, doesn't really matter, because that just helps people get over that initial bit about getting into the habit of doing something and then not having to think too much about, well, what do I need to do? It's something that guides me. And in time, it then becomes just part of your muscle memory. You know the practice. Then you can spend more time, like I ended up doing, really thinking about, why am I doing these movements, right? Every time I go up, I feel something move. Chi's being moved, right? Oh, okay, I understand chi is moving. And before you know what, you're not only gathering chi, you're learning how to have that flow again properly through your body. Because actually, having your chi levels topped up and then encouraging the network of your body to actually distribute the chi to where it needs to be, that fixes so many problems. It's not really isn't rocket science. In the straight process design head, I'd go, make sure you get enough chi, make sure it flows, let the stuff do what it needs to do. It's certainly worked for me, and I've seen it work for a few people, so really keen to try and help people understand that really basic message.
And we will put your contact details in the show notes, obviously, so anybody who would like to work with you or join the workshops can get in touch. And I think, this is a great finishing point because you've been a very inspiring guest here. And I think we touched quite a few key points when it comes to why people heal and what the success factors might be. So I think this was a very good conversation here, and I hope many people will benefit from it. So thank you very much, David, for being with me today. And I look forward to have you again on the show or see you again in person. I had the privilege to meet you not too long ago. It was really fun to be with you, but I'm sure people can tell that you're not just a great therapist, but also a fun person to be around with. And so if you can't make it to his online calls, maybe you should go out with him for a glass of healthy orange juice or something and have some fun.
Thanks for the time, Torsten. Great speaking with you.
Thank you, David, and have a fantastic day further.
Bye-bye.
We trust you enjoyed this conversation, and we invite you to subscribe to our podcast so we can stay in touch and notify you of future episodes. We will end today's episode with the 8 verses meditation performed by Jin and Qigong teacher Katrin Hendricks. Enjoy. To get your free ebook on the 8 Verses meditation, please check the show notes below.